Hi friends, welcome to Beautifully Bookish Bethany. Today I am beginning my reading vlog for the Queer Romance Readathon. I am really excited. It's starting today and I think it's gonna be great. We've got a lot going on. We've got a bingo board happening. I've got a lot of books on my TBR. We'll see how many I can get through. I wanted to give you all a bit of an update on where I'm at right now. One book that I started reading last week, so before it started, but I'm gonna talk about it in this video because I'm loving it and almost done, is Rosaline Palmer Takes the Cake by Alexis Hall. What I didn't know before starting this is the main character is bisexual, and it does an excellent job of dealing with bisexuality and biphobia. And yeah, like I really love Alexis Hall's writing. One thing to note about this is it's unusual for a romance in that a significant part of the book involves the heroine dating somebody who maybe doesn't end up who she's going to be with at the end. That's like slightly spoilery, I guess, but I think it's like important to know because some people really don't like that in their romance novels. They only want to see the person with the person they're going to end up with. One other thing too is it does include some biphobia, and there is an attempted sexual assault on the page. Doesn't follow through, but worth knowing. But absolutely loving this. I have a little bit left to go, and I will let you all know what I think when I get to the ending. But at this point, I mean, it's somewhere between like a 4.5 and 5 star for me. I'm a fan. And then the other book that I'm reading, I'm not far into it yet, but I am going to be reading Devon and Chris Plan a Wedding by Chensia C. Higgins. I'm kind of excited because I got a physical copy of this back in January, but it turns out the audiobook is now getting released, and I got approved for an audio arc on NetGalley. So I've started it, but I'm not far in. Excited to read this. It's a queer romance with Black characters, and it includes a reality dating show, sort of like a pretend you're getting married and fool your friends and family. So it should be interesting. I think I'm also at some point today gonna start Drag Me Up by R.M. Virtues, which is our group book. So I'll update you all later in the day. But so far so good, and I'm excited to see what the week brings us. One thing to note is we'll see how my day goes. One of my kids ended up being sick, so he's home from school. My husband's working from home today, so we're gonna kind of tag team it. I'm gonna be on some sprints on Izzy's channel, and we'll see how things go. But so far, off to a good start with reading. Hello, it is Tuesday afternoon. I'm finally back with an update. Again, having a sick kid at home has definitely made things a little bit more challenging. Thankfully, he is finally feeling a lot better. His fever has been gone since last night, and that means he can go back to school tomorrow, which is very exciting because I can actually like get more things done, do some more reading, do some errands that I've been sort of putting off, which is good news. That said, I have been tag teaming with my spouse in terms of, you know, managing having a child at home, and so I have been able to get some reading done, which has been great, part of which was on those sprints over on Izzy's channel yesterday. So let's talk about what I've read. I finished reading Rosaline Palmer Takes the Cake by Alexis Hall. Having given this some thought, and I don't know if I said this earlier, but I do think that this in some ways falls more into women's fiction than romance, but I really love it. I love the bisexual representation. I really enjoy Alexis Hall's writing. I find it funny and cozy, and I just think he's very smart, and yeah, I like this a lot. I gave it 4.5 stars. I think going in with the right expectations is important, but I was a fan. Then the book I was mostly reading during the reading sprints was Mrs. Martin's Incomparable Adventure by Courtney Milan. I've been meaning to read this for a while. It's a little novella. It is a sapphic historical following 2 senior-aged characters. One is 69, one is 73, and this was great. It was really charming. It was kind of funny and a little silly at times, but tackled some, I think, important issues in terms of the way that older women were treated by society at the time and how little recourse they had for certain things. Like, isn't it completely realistic? No, but like if you can go along for the ride, there is some real historical content in here as well, and it's just like a really cute, frothy, slow burn romance between these 2 older women who are, you know, lonely, and even though they're in very different circumstances, I think it ends up working out. I like Courtney Milan's writing a lot. It usually works out for me, and I gave this book 4 stars. Currently, I'm reading 2 things for the readathon. The first is Devon and Chris Plan a Wedding by Chensia C. Higgins. Twins. This is my current main audiobook. So far I'm liking it. I'm not that far into it yet. The two have met on this reality show and they are about to announce their engagement to one of their families. Devon is a femme fat Black woman, and what I think is interesting about her is she grew up pretty religious and hasn't come out to her family yet. And so going on this show is the way she's planning to come out to them, which is kind of a big deal. Then we have Chris, who identifies as a stud. That is a term that more masc presenting Black lesbians use, and she's definitely out to everyone, out to her family, and she is looking for love. She's kind of big on social media for doing like weightlifting type stuff and hasn't had great luck with relationships. And so even though a lot of people go on the show and end up at the end taking the money instead of actually getting married, she wants to get married. She wants to find the love of her life, which is interesting. And her family is Afro-Latin, so we're getting some of that representation in here. So far I'm liking it. Again, I'm not that far into it yet, but so far so good. I will update you all once I know a little bit more. And then the other book that I'm currently reading, which again, I'm not far in, I'm just in chapter 2, but I'm reading Drag Me Up by R.M. Virtues, which is our group book. This is a contemporary reimagining of the Hades and Persephone story, but it's in kind of a mafia type world. Part of why I picked this is I had been wanting to read it, but also it meets a whole bunch of the prompts for the readathon. The author is Black, trans, indigenous, and Latinx, as well as disabled. So it meets all of those prompts, including more. And in this book, we have a trans Persephone, who is a circus performer, and a demi-pansexual Hades, who runs a casino. So again, has kind of some mafia vibes to it. So far, I'm liking it. I'm curious to see where it goes. Not super far in yet, but yeah, looking forward to this one. So considering I have a kid homesick, I'm not doing too bad. We've got 2 books down, currently reading 2 more. And one of the things that I need to do is put together a couple of packages to mail out to patrons. I send out birthday packages to some of my higher tier patrons, and then I also have a perk to send out to one of my podcast patrons. So I need to get those packages together. My plan is to pop in my AirPods and listen to some more of Devon and Chris plan a wedding. So maybe I'll show you a couple clips of putting some of that stuff together. Almost 40% of the way into Devon and Chris Plan a Wedding, and I am continuing to really like it. I think it's very good. The audiobook is really good too. And one thing I thought this would be appropriate to share is I had kind of a cool unexpected package come in the mail from Fierce Reads. It's the YA arm of Macmillan. So they had this Pride box that they sent with 3 finished copies of queer books. So I don't know a better place to share. We have Just Your Local Bisexual Disaster by Andrea Mosqueda. This I've heard a little bit about. It's a debut YA contemporary novel that's a coming of age story with a bisexual teenager who has grown up in Texas's Rio Grande Valley. I'm not like a big YA contemporary coming of age story type of person, but if this sounds up your alley, maybe go check it out. Then one where honestly the reviews look amazing, and I know this is going to be hard-hitting and heartbreaking, but I kind of want to read it. This is When You Call My Name by Tucker Shaw. It's set in the 1990s and follows 2 teen boys living in New York City, one of whom has left home because it's no longer safe for him after coming out. This deals with the AIDS crisis, and yeah, like people seem to be loving it. I really want to read it. Lastly, we have another fun historical fiction. This is Valiant Ladies by Melissa Gray. Apparently this is based on real Latin history, and it's about lesbian girls who have swords. I don't know, like this sounds amazing. 17th century young ladies who at night trade their silks and laces for swords and muskets, venturing out into the vibrant, bustling, crime-ridden streets of Potosi in Peru. And again, it's based on like real history, which sounds amazing. 3 queer books for Pride. Thank you so much to Macmillan and Fierce Reads. Go check them out if they sound up your alley, and I will check back in once I've done some more reading. Good afternoon. It's Wednesday. I'm here with another reading update. This morning was kind of nice because both of my kids are finally back in school today, thank God. younger one is feeling much better. My spouse and I went out and had a nice breakfast together to celebrate our 11-year wedding anniversary, which happened over the weekend, but with busyness and a sick kid, we didn't really do much to celebrate. So we went out and had breakfast and hung out, and that was nice. I finished another book for the readathon. I finished Devon and Chris Plan a Wedding by Chensia C. Higgins. I liked this quite a lot. I will say this book does something that always makes me cringe a little bit, but I feel like this is a very personal thing that not everybody has the same response to. They have a lot of PDA, and they also have sex in like a semi-public location at one point, which just makes me really nervous for people, but some people like that. So if you're into that, there is some of that in here. Personally, it makes me a little uncomfortable. Like the level of PDA in front of family members, I was like, okay, this is being played as like cute, but like for me it's a lot, but to each his own. Otherwise, I liked this pretty well. I think it's a solid romance. I think the reality TV show creates an interesting element to it where they have to do different challenges and like fool their families into thinking that they've been engaged or together for longer than they actually have. I liked it. It's definitely a little bit spicy. I think it's a sweet romance. It is one of the rare romances that doesn't use the miscommunication trope or the third act breakup. So if those are things that you find irritating, this book actually doesn't do it. There is sometimes a little bit of misunderstanding, but it's not miscommunication. It's more people being willing to share themselves and be honest with themselves and stuff. And so you kind of see this upward trajectory over time. So yeah, I liked it. I would give this 4 stars, and that gives me 3 books for the readathon so far, which is exciting. One book I forgot to mention that I also started before the readathon and I have on audio because it's available through the Audible Plus catalog is Nova by Samuel R. Delaney. So this is kind of an interesting one that was recommended in a live stream by Michael over at Fit to Be Read. So Samuel R. Delaney was a gay Black man who wrote science fiction in the 70s, I want to say. So this is a little bit of an older book. It doesn't have an explicit romance on the page, but Michael said he feels like it counts because there is a relationship that subtextually he thinks is intended to be sort of a gay relationship. I'll be honest, I'm struggling a little bit with this book and I've wondered if I should just DNF it. Like, it's interesting. Maybe I'll probably just finish it. I don't have that much more in it, but it's interesting and it's got interesting ideas, but it jumps around a lot and I'm not always entirely sure like what's going on or who different characters are. Sometimes I can put it together, but it's a little confusing. It's possible that it could be because of the audiobook, that maybe if I was reading it physically, I might have better luck with it, but I don't know. Yeah, so I'm not sure how to feel about it. Again, I'll probably keep going with it just because I don't have that much more to read, and I do think it's interesting reading something from this era by a gay Black man. One thing to note about this is in some ways it's a product of its time and it uses some words for people that are considered slurs today. Like there's a character who is Romani but is referred to by a word that we don't really use so much. Black characters are referred to not in like a slur way necessarily, but some ways that maybe wouldn't be super comfortable for today's readers. So just heads up, in some ways it's, you know, kind of a product of its time. So I think what's going on is these characters have been recruited by the captain of the spaceship to go on a maybe dangerous trip to a supernova where somehow you can get into the supernova and collect this thing. I forget what it's called, but it's like super powerful as an energy thing. Like even a small amount of it can power a lot of stuff and it's valuable. But there's a lot of flashbacks. It feels kind of non-linear and feels kind of trippy. There is drug use in it and technology things. I don't know, like it just, the way that it flows together is disorienting, which I think is probably why I'm struggling with it. It's not like a linearly told story, but it, again, like there are some interesting moments in it. So we'll see. I'm gonna like keep trying with it. I'm not sure this is gonna be a new favorite, but at least I'm giving it a shot. So yeah, 3 books down. I'm currently reading that, and then I need to make some progress on Drag Me Up, so that's probably gonna happen fairly soon. And then I'm not sure. I have a couple of other books on deck, so I will check back in once I know what I'm doing. I spent a good chunk of today organizing my kids' schedule for the summer. They get out of school pretty soon, and we needed to put like dates in the calendar, confirm the babysitter that we have a couple days a week, confirm the dates that we're sending them to camp, and like figure out our work schedules in conjunction with that. So I spent a while kind of organizing our family life. Basically. So I'm gonna go premiere a video and then maybe do a little bit of reading before I have to leave to pick up my kids from their after school activities. But before I pick them up, I also need to go by the post office to mail the packages that I put together yesterday. Hello, it is Thursday and I have finished 2 books. I also need to film my mid-month wrap up, but before I do that, I wanted to do a quick update on my reading for the vlog. I finished reading Nova by Samuel R. Delany. I continue to sort of feel like maybe this wasn't the best book to listen to via audio. I got the gist of it. I think there are some really interesting ideas being explored here, but because it's more non-linear and doesn't smoothly transition between things, it was a little bit difficult to follow and sometimes a little bit like a fever dream, but other parts were not. Other parts I was like, oh, I'm into this, this is interesting, and then it would kind of like transition into something else. The basic premise of the story, because I don't know if I said this, is there's a captain of a spaceship who has assembled this sort of ragtag crew to go on a quest for Illyrium or something. It's like this, I think I did mention this, that it's like this powerful substance, right? And along the way, you get flashbacks about some of the different characters. You get like drug-induced maybe hallucinations possibly, and some like random side plots and like going to visit different planets. I don't know, it feels a little bit random and disjointed. There's not like a clear plot, and even the way the book ends is interesting. Kind of weird, but it's experimental, I guess I should say. And this came out in 1968, so it was written a long time ago. There are some moments where you feel some queer undertones to what's happening, but there's nothing overt. Again, it came out in 1968. Like, does this really fit the like queer romance thing? I don't know, but I'm gonna count it here. It is a queer book by a Black author, and it was an interesting experience. I would definitely try something else by Samuel Delany in the future. This one wasn't necessarily my favorite. I gave it 3 stars. It has some interesting ideas. I'm glad I tried it. This just maybe wasn't so much the book for me. But again, he's written a lot of other stuff that has been more well received, so I will probably try something from him again in the future, and I'm glad I continued on with it. Then I read Femme Like Her by Fiona Zedis, and this was such a pleasant surprise. I don't know what I expected going in. I had heard good things and I had the audiobook and I was like, yeah, like this seems like a good time to read this. It's a Black love lesbian romance by a queer Black author, I think with Jamaican ancestry, which does make its way into the book, which is interesting. So when I first read this, I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna feel because things heat up very quickly, like right off the bat between our 2 heroines. That's not typically my preference in reading a romance, and it made me nervous that it was gonna be kind of not enough plot or not enough emotional connection or depth for it to work for me. I was completely proven wrong. That was definitely not the case. So this is all told in one perspective from a woman who only dates studs, so Black masc presenting lesbians, not femmes, because she's a femme and she'd been hurt by a femme that she had dated in the past and just doesn't want to do it anymore. When this very kind of dominant, intense femme comes onto her and they have immediate intense chemistry. But then things get really complicated. This book ended up being really amazing in terms of letting the characters learn and grow throughout the plot. It's something that ends up dealing with misconceptions or prejudices that I think are a problem within lesbian and bisexual communities. Things like the assumption that with a woman, it always has to be a more feminine presenting and a more masc presenting person, sort of mirroring heterosexual relationships, which is not the case. I liked how it pushed back on that. It also addresses this issue of biphobia, and I liked how it handled that because that's a very real issue that some people have, of fear from lesbians of, oh, I would couldn't be with a bisexual woman because then what if she left me for a man, or what if she'd been with a man before? And, you know, a lot of this obviously is coming out of insecurity, but I liked the way that the book addressed that. Also, our main character has Jamaican heritage, and it talks about the homophobic laws in Jamaica and the impact that that has had on queer communities there and the violence that has happened to queer people. So yeah, it just dealt with a lot of deep topics, and the relationship between these women was really good, and I liked the way that it all worked out. So this ended up being such a pleasant surprise. I thought I would have a good time with it. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. I would probably give this like a 4.5 star. And I definitely want to read more from this author in the future. She has another book called A Stud Like Her that's part of the same series, so I may try to pick that up at some point, but would definitely recommend it. In terms of things I'm currently reading, I've got The Sorcerer of the Wild Deeps by Kaya Wilson. This is a African-inspired fantasy novella by a Black gay author with a gay romance, from what I understand. And you know, I'm not super far in yet. So far it's intriguing. We'll see how I get on with it. And then I need to make more progress on Drag Me Up. So whenever I'm able to actually sit down and like physically read that, hopefully in the next couple of days, I'll, you know, start really making my way through that book. Since it's the group book, that's for sure gonna happen. But yeah, overall, I'm really pleased with the books that I've picked up. I think things are going well. Hello, it is Friday morning. I finished one more book yesterday that I'm here to update you on. Did I also start 2 more books that weren't on my TBR? Yes, I did. So I guess I'm going to be your chaotic bisexual reader for this video. But the book that I finished reading was The Sorcerer of the Wild Deeps by Kaya Wilson. Listen, I freaking love this book, and it makes me kind of sad looking at reviews because it makes me, okay, excuse me because I don't intend this to come across as pretentious, but the reviews make me feel like people don't understand the book and what it's trying to do. I'm like, no, it's so good. You just don't understand it. It's so good. So here's the thing. I think part of the problem is the way that the book is being marketed, the description on the back of the book gives a certain idea about the kind of book that this is that isn't accurate. You know what I think actually is accurate and will give you a better idea of what you're getting into with this book is some of the blurbs. Now that is not always the case, but in this case, I feel like some of the blurbs actually do a better job of setting you up for what to expect from this book. So let me read you some of the blurbs. Daniel Jose Older says, "The unruly love child of Shakespeare, Baldwin, George R.R. Martin, and Ghostface Killah. This was a book I could not put down. Read this book, then read it again slowly to savor each delicious, riveting moment." Max Gladstone said, "The Sorcerer of the Wild Deeps reads like Gene Wolfe and Samuel R. Delany trying to one-up each other on a story prompt by Fritz Leiber. That means it's good. Read it." Alyssa Wong, who I have not read from, says, "Seamlessly knots magic and science in a wholly organic way. The Sorcerer of the Wild Deeps will catch you by the throat and hold you fast into the last searing word." Listen, this is literary sci-fantasy, and I don't think that's how it was marketed. It was being marketed more as like African-inspired fantasy with demigods, and kind of, it's definitely a sci-fantasy. I feel like Gene Wolfe is a pretty good comparison in that sense because there's a lot of subtle literary and historical things being referenced, and we get a lot of clues dropped throughout the course of the novella that this isn't a purely fantastical world, that what we're probably dealing with instead is aliens who have come to Earth and have more advanced technology, but to humans it seems like magic, okay? And it's so good and it's so smart, and I love Kaya Wilson's writing. It does have a gay romance in it, and it's kind of beautiful, the love that this man who's our main character has for this other man. I loved that. This was great. Is it going to be the book for everybody? No. I mean, much like Gene Wolfe is not going to be for everybody, this is also not going to be for everybody because it is subtle. It doesn't just sort of dump information in your lap. You have to pick up on context clues to piece together what's going on. But I do think it's worth it if you do it. If you're willing to do the work, it's worth it. I would actually ignore the description because I just don't think it captures what this book actually is, and I feel like a lot of the negative reviews of it are maybe because of that. That's my feeling. So yeah, I don't know. I hadn't heard amazing things about this first book, but I still wanted to give it a try, and it's fantastic. One thing I wanted to mention that I think is kind of brilliant, it's another thing that people in reviews seem not to like, but I think it's so smart and so clearly intentionally done, is there is a big disconnect between the narrative voice, the internal voice of the character, and the dialogue between other characters. The dialogue is mostly written in AAVE, but most of the internal thinking and the narrative voice is using very elevated sort of literary language. And I think that's so smart because you're getting an example of code switching. For our main character, the sorcerer, who's not actually human but is living and working with humans, he views it as speaking their language. So AAVE is their language, and so he interprets what he means into language that makes sense for them. Anyway, I just really like it. I think it's an interesting approach, a way of showing cultural and linguistic differences and code switching. It's clever. Anyway, I loved this, and the more I'm talking about it, the more I think this deserves 5 stars from me. So I think I'm gonna give 5 stars to this, which I feel like is an unpopular opinion. A lot of people weren't huge fans of it. There is a sequel that I also have, and now I'm even more excited to read it because people generally seem to like the sequel better than the original. I just feel like this was mismarketed, and the authors who blurbed it understood what it was trying to do, but I don't know that the marketing team understood what it was trying to do. But yeah, would highly recommend. I think it's fantastic. And then did I start 2 audiobooks? Yes, I did. I got the NetGalley audiobook for review for Valiant Ladies by Melissa Gray, which came in that package I showed you earlier in the video. So I thought, what the hell? Let's start it. It's a little long, so I don't know that I'm gonna finish it in time for the end of the readathon, so I started another one also. But so far it's pretty interesting. Again, YA historical fiction following 2 girls with swords in Peru. What's not to like? It's fun. The other thing that I am listening to that's probably going to be my more active audiobook that I do anticipate finishing for sure before the end of the readathon is I Kissed Chara Wheeler by Casey McQuiston. This seemed like the perfect time to pull this out. I have the audiobook from Libra FM, so thank you to them. If you want to check them out, there is a link in the video description. They're fantastic for audiobooks, and some of the money that you pay there goes to support local indie bookstores, so I always recommend them. But this I'm liking. It's Casey McQuiston's first YA book, and it's YA contemporary with kind of a mystery element to it that is dealing with evangelical Christianity in the South and what it is like to be a queer person there. So what's really interesting about this is that the book is about Chara Wheeler, but at least so far, Chara Wheeler hasn't actually shown up on the page. She's disappeared and has left behind sort of a scavenger hunt of clues for people to put together. And our main character, who's our perspective, is a queer bisexual girl going to a private Christian school in a small town in the South. She moved there from California with her 2 lesbian moms, and she and Chara Wheeler were kind of rivals to try to become valedictorian. And right before she disappeared, Chara Wheeler, who's like always been the perfect, smart, good girl, dad is the principal, she's dating the football player, right before she disappeared, she kissed our heroine, kissed another boy, and then left clues for them and her boyfriend to put together. And so that's kind of what's happening. I'm really liking it, and I think it's interesting, especially from the perspective of having grown up in evangelical Christianity. I didn't grow up in the South, but there's a lot of similarities, and so I'm very curious to see where this is gonna go. So I'm reading those. I'm about to edit my mid-month wrap-up and post that for people, and then I plan to spend most of my afternoon reading for the readathon, so it should be fun. So it's 12:30. I am uploading my mid-month wrap-up. It's edited, and I'm gonna be making it live later today. I did realize I forgot to talk about a book that I'm reading. I also have an e-arc I'm reading. It's Youngbloods by Sasha Lawrence, and so far I'm really enjoying it. It's a YA novel about vampires going to an exclusive vampire boarding school, and there is a sapphic relationship that I think is going to develop, and there's lots of drama, and it's really interesting. So far I am thoroughly enjoying it, so I'm also reading that one. Continuing to listen a bit to I Kissed Chara Wheeler, liking it. I don't have much more to say at the moment. I'm gonna go get something to eat for lunch, and I think I'm gonna bring Drag Me Up with me so I can get a little more progress made on that book while I'm there. Hello, I finished reading I Kissed Shara Wheeler and I really liked it. It's one of the better YA books that I've read recently. It was very interesting and readable. I think the mystery piece of it kept my attention and kept me curious. And you know what I like about it is I like that it has girls who aren't necessarily nice. Like, they can be kind, maybe, but they're not necessarily nice, and they're messy. And I like that it explores how, you know, like, high school isn't everything, and that the person that you are in high school is not necessarily the person you're going to be forever or have to be forever, and that there are a lot of queer people in high school who don't yet realize they're queer themselves or aren't out yet. And yeah, I don't know. I guess one interesting thing about this too is there's a sentiment expressed by a character that I think is part of what this book is about, is that if everybody who's different or queer leaves the South, then nothing will ever change. And I think that's pretty interesting. I was expecting more of the evangelical Christianity stuff in this book than what we actually got. It honestly was relatively minor. I mean, it is there. Like, there are people who are homophobic because of that. There is some level of complication of like faith and sexuality, but it's not a main focus of the book. Yeah, I don't know what else I want to say about it, but I liked it. And what am I gonna rate it? I don't know. I'm feeling like 4 stars, maybe 4.5. I need to sit down and actually write a review and see how I feel, but positive. Honestly, I'm really pleased with the books I've been picking up. Overall, I have been liking them. It's been going pretty well. Yet another book done. Doing pretty well. Finishing Drag Me Up will give me a bingo, so I am on track. I did read a couple more chapters in Drag Me Up. I'm enjoying it. I'm intrigued. We'll see where it goes. I will check back in later. Hey everybody, I'm here to wrap up this vlog. It is Tuesday morning. I have a little footage from the weekend that I'm gonna include here, but mostly it's gonna be me sort of recapping what I read in the last few days. Part of this is because Saturday morning I started coming down with a cold, so I was sick over the weekend. We had kind of a family emergency thing, and then Father's Day was Sunday. The kids were home from school Monday. Like, basically vlogging just didn't happen. I have read 3 books since the last time I checked in with you, so I'm going to tell you about those books and how they went. Overall, honestly, I'm really impressed at how much I got read for this readathon. It was more than I was anticipating. A lot of it was audiobooks, which is totally fine, and I read a lot of stuff that I really enjoyed, so it's been a fun way to get a lot of things off my TBR. If my voice sounds different, it's probably also because I am still recovering from this cold, although I am on the upswing, so hopefully I'll be back to normal soon. Not COVID. I did test a couple times. It's just a cold. So here's a little bit of footage from Sunday. We went out for Father's Day, which was fun. We had lunch at Chipotle, which is great for kids with allergies. And we went to a mini golf course. And then the kids played in the park and we had a great day. It was really fun. So happy Father's Day to my wonderful spouse, who is an incredible father, incredible partner. We had a good time celebrating. So let's talk about the 3 books that I read for the last few days of the readathon. First, I did finish reading The Girl Next Door by Chelsea M. Cameron, and this was adorable. I loved it. If you are looking for a sweet, cozy, small town female-female romance that is very low angst, I would highly recommend this. I think the people who aren't loving this are the people who want more drama in their romance, or the people who think it's too slow and cozy. It was just what I was looking for. I really enjoyed it. It's 2 young women who are back in their small hometown in Maine where they never expected to be, living next door to each other, and end up kind of falling for each other. And it was really good. It was slow, it was sweet, it was a little steamy. It was great. Like, it gave me what I wanted. What did I rate this? I don't remember. I think I gave this like 4.5 stars. I loved it. Then I read the group book, Drag Me Up by R.M. Virtues. This was excellent, and it was a big hit among the co-hosts too. So if you haven't seen it yet, I will link up above our live show that we did where we sort of wrapped up our reading in the readathon and we discussed the group book. Drag Me Up is an indie debut novel, which I'm really impressed by. It's a retelling of Hades and Persephone. This was great. It was really good. I don't want to get into all the details. We did talk about it quite a bit in the live show, but I was just impressed with this as a first novel. It is very erotic and it does have some BDSM elements, but it does a good job with consent, which is always great. It also does a great job of not letting power play in the bedroom leak into toxic elements in the relationship. They had a great relationship with each other. They had good communication. They clearly respected each other. They were working through their own issues and trauma, and there's great growth arcs and character arcs, but also, like, yeah, I don't know. It was really good. And I liked a lot of the side characters. I do want to read on in the series. Some of the sex scenes are like a little more than what I typically pick up. I've read this kind of stuff before. It was like a couple people were like, Bethany, how are you gonna do? I have read this sort of stuff before. It's not like it's my first time reading it. It's just not usually what I gravitate towards. But again, the sex scenes are more on the more intense and graphic side. They do have some BDSM elements, although, you know, Hades and Persephone kind of go back and forth in terms of who's taking control and who's giving it up. So I think one thing that we all talked about in the live show as well is the fact that it was very satisfying to see Zeus in this portrayed as the kind of asshole playboy philanderer that he actually was in Greek mythology and get his comeuppance. It was a very satisfying conclusion. So I really liked this. Not my favorite thing I read for the readathon, but I think very good, and I definitely want to read more from RM Virtues in the future. Clearly he knows the mythology really well, which not all retellings of this are grounded in knowledge of the mythology. Not that it's exactly like the mythology, he definitely plays with it, but clearly he knows. Also, Persephone's safe word is pomegranate, which is entirely appropriate for the book. It's great. So I ended up giving this one 4 stars. Not my favorite thing I read for the readathon, but really good. And I'm so pleased that this was a hit because I hadn't read it before I picked it as the group book, and you just never know how that's gonna go. I'm very glad everybody was a fan. Some people said this is going to be in their favorite books of the year. So hey, I would say that's a win. The last book that I read might be my second favorite thing I read for the readathon, and I need to pick up more from this author. I read Just Like This by Cole McCade. This was so good. I feel like this book is not going to be everybody's cup of tea because he has a very specific writing style, which I love, but not everybody's gonna like this in their romance. It's very descriptive, flowery, almost lyrical at times. I was a fan of it. I thought it was beautiful and emotional. I loved the relationship between the two men in this book. It follows a romance between 2 faculty members at an all-boys boarding school. One of them is the kind of gruff football coach who is a total teddy bear on the inside, and the other one is this almost nymph-like art teacher who's also kind of the sad boy aesthetic, I guess, in some ways. And I really love their relationship. It's a quieter, slower story. 2 of them are working together to try to figure out what's going on with the student that they share, and they're worried about the student. They're trying to find out what's going on so that they can help him, and they kind of fall into each other along the way. And I just loved it. I loved how much they care about their students. I loved seeing them both work through their own internal issues and hangups. One thing that I didn't know going into this is that Damon, who is the football coach, is also Indigenous, but his backstory is that he had been adopted by a white family and has been struggling with how to reconnect with those roots, or whether he feels valid reconnecting with those roots. I just thought that was a really rich kind of added layer to the story. The author is gender nonconforming, bisexual, Black, Asian, and Native American. So I do wonder if any of his experiences have layered into this kind of storytelling, but it is a real issue of Indigenous children having been taken from their families and not necessarily having that connection with their heritage. So I just liked a lot about this. I thought the writing was beautiful. I loved the relationship. I gave this 5 stars, and I definitely want to pick up more from Cole McCade in the future. So I would also call that a hit. All in all, I ended up finishing 10 books in this week. Now, granted, 2 of them I did start and read a significant portion of before the readathon started, so I didn't read in their entirety all 10 books, but still, that was more than I was expecting, especially having come out of a very slumpy reading period early in the month. Very happy, and I read a lot of stuff that I enjoyed. I would love to hear from you in the comments down below if you participated. What was one of the highlights of your reading for the week? This was really fun, and we've had really great responses from people, so I think we may try to bring back the Queer Romance Readathon again for 2023. If you'd be interested, let me know in the comments down below. If you guys like this video, it does help if you give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time.